Tackling endgame challenges in Heaven Burns Red can be a bit difficult to figure out, but can also be greatly rewarding if you play your cards right. My name is Psyche, and I've been playing HBR almost every day since its global release. Welcome to the fourth of the series of guides for the game. Today, I will be going over what the best Memorias are, given that we're 100 days into the server's launch, provide a detailed walkthrough of the current score attack, as well as a snippet of the Clock Tower, another endgame mode with some exciting rewards. While the game itself is story-oriented, there are many ways to challenge your roster to get some cool goodies. Now, this video assumes that you know all about the basics and know how to build your units for the late game, as that is explained in my previous 3 guides. Be sure to familiarize yourself with the basics, as I will be using certain game terms and phrases to explain the process. The first order of business is actually forming a team that's good enough to compete with endgame challenges. The general rule for an effective squad consists of 1 damage dealer, 1 healer, and 4 supports. The supporters will either buff the attacker in some way, debuff the enemy in some way, or provide a method to sustain the team like a defender. There can be many variations of this, and it mainly depends on which Memorias you own and which enemy you're facing. However, there's a handful of standouts in the roster that will elevate your gameplay to the next level, regardless of who you have. A general pattern is that Yostar and Right Flyer Studio know which Memorias are good, and those ones will get rerun more often and appear more frequently on paid quartz banners. A reminder is that the pity for the global servers is 150 pulls or 45,000 quartz to guarantee a rate-up Memoria of your choice. By the way, there's an event happening right now that gives 100 free pulls, a free multi every day for 10 days. Here are my recommendations for gacha pulls as of 100 days into the global server, assuming that you play for meta and wish to have the best start when it comes to making endgame content easier. Yingsha from Squad 31X is still the only easily accessible Memoria in the game right now that grants multi-hit to another ally, greatly enhancing their output. Members from 31X also have the unique ability to use their EX skill as long as their SP is 0 or above. This means you can use an EX skill even if you don't have enough SP to afford it, with the drawback of letting your SP going into the negatives. However, if you're delivering the final blow with the skill anyways, it usually doesn't matter, since the battle is already finished after this turn. Seika's second SS variant was the top pick at launch, and still has a lot of potential when slotted into any team. If you cast her EX skill twice, then the next hit is guaranteed to crit through its 2 stacked effects. Still, she is a bit more replaceable than Yingsha, as crit buffs become more accessible as time goes on. Mua's debut has overtaken Tama as the best healer in the game, as her EX skill allows you to overheal allies, and also giving the backline members tactical vision, basically also serving as a buffer. Because of the overheal, Tama's DP bar repair mechanic slightly falls out of favor. Even if you don't have Mua's SS version, her S version still carries a pretty decent heal ability. Yotsuha's first SS variant brings the fire meta to its full capacity. Being able to buff an ally's crit rate and fire crit damage allows any fire-based damage dealer to do some solid work. Not to mention adding a fire skill damage up too. This means Memorias such as Ruka's SS1 or Minori's SS1 for AoE will be natural fits for a fire team. Aoi's first SS variant still has one of the most powerful defensive abilities out there, being able to draw enemy attacks and providing 2 instances of damage nullification. You can cheat the team out of having to take a lot of enemy attacks. It's basically a get-out-of-jail-free card, where when played correctly, your team won't take any damage for potentially 2 turns. Aoi's taunt ability is unique in the sense that all enemy attacks will be drawn to her, even if it's AoE. Just be warned that while the taunt effect lasts 3 turns, her nullification effect only lasts for 2 instances of damage. So when fighting a single enemy, you'll likely be able to safely stall for 2 turns. But when there are 2 enemies, then they will both attack, meaning that you will only be safe for 1 turn. When it comes to damage dealers, they're much more lenient, since as long as they can exploit enemy weakness, they're usually good enough to serve the role. However, the absolute standout at the moment goes to Aoi once again. As if being the best defender in the game wasn't good enough, her maid version arrives to steamroll the competition. This maid has the totem mechanic, where accumulating it can increase the damage she deals for a maximum of 10 totems. She has a common skill that taunts enemies for 3 turns, and every time she is hit by an attack, 1 totem is granted. This even extends to if she nullifies said damage, where a totem is granted anyways. This means if you have her SS1 skill projected onto her maid version, Aoi is going to be an absolute monster. One warning is that her skill only scales off vitality, so instead of building strength or dexterity like other damage dealers, vitality will be the only stat she will want instead. Your build should look something like this. Aside from these handful of overachievers, I also want to go over some worthy S-rank Memorias, as some of them can be pretty decent too. The first on the list goes to Yingsha's S1 variant. This is because alongside Shiki's S rank, they also have the unique passive ability to grant +1 SP to all backline members per turn. That's 3 additional SP, which is kinda crazy. Note that they need to be at least Limit Break 3 to unlock this passive. Luckily, you can get enough S-rank shards from the numerous event shops. I'll give Mia and Aina's S1 variants a special mention. Given that they're still some of the cheapest ways to slap a vulnerable debuff, they can usually fit into a team if you don't have any other debuffers available yet. I even use them in my example teams as of now. Here are the 2 teams that I've set up that's usually good enough to clear all sorts of content in the game. The first can be much more generalized as it contains most of the units I talked about earlier. Seika and Yingsha for the effective buffs, Mua as the healer, Aoi for defending, any debuffer here, and finally, your damage dealer. This team is general enough that you would just have to swap out your main carry with another that inflicts another element or damage type, and you'll be good to go. Alternatively, I also have a fire-based team relying on Yotsuha for crit buffs instead. This setup exclusively revolves around a single element type. While I'm still waiting on a few other key units, this team is more specialized and will require you to run a fire-based damage dealer to reap all the benefits. Now that we know what some of the best meta picks are at the moment, let's learn how we can use them for combat. For this guide, I will be demonstrating the current score attack, Endless Phantom, on how I would go about tackling it and getting all the rewards. Score attacks represent a big portion of endgame content. But while the list of rewards is long, you don't actually need to clear it on the highest possible difficulty to be comfortable in account progression. You can select the difficulty level as well as a set of modifiers that will increase your final score multiplier. Difficulty goes up to 120. The modifiers, when all of them are activated, will multiply your final score by 135%. When you get to the higher difficulties such as 100+, be sure to not let any of your teammates' DP bar get depleted. You get a no-break bonus when clearing the stage under this condition, and while this bonus seems small, it does get more impactful as you climb the difficulty ranks. As you can see, in order to get all the weekly rewards, you just have to beat difficulty 91 and activate all the modifiers. The modifiers themselves actually change after a week, as each score attack lasts for 2 weeks. Clearing it again with the refresh modifiers will get you another recruitment ticket and a bit more quartz. When it comes to beating the SA, the first order of business is to check any enemy configurations or weaknesses. We can see that there are 2 enemies, and they have a weakness to light and dark. This means ideally you will want an AoE, light or dark element damage dealer for the job. For this demonstration, I will be setting the difficulty to 101 and having all modifiers active. This should be enough to give me all the rewards in the score track, but also give an example how you're expected to play in the late game. Note that this is not enough to get the final platinum trophy, but given that I play casually and don't have full limit broken units, it's more than enough to get all the major rewards. It goes without saying, but your teams should be fully upgraded and enhanced, with most if not all of the accessories having their slots filled. One of the modifiers gives the bosses resistance to pierce damage, so naturally I wouldn't want to hit the boss with pierce attacks, as that won't generate any overdrive. For the damage dealer, I will be using the new Yuina Memoria, as she deals AoE damage with the dark element, so she will be able to deal with the challenge effectively. There isn't much to explain in the early couple turns other than getting some hits and building overdrive. Assuming that you have defensive stats in the mid 300s, the enemy shouldn't be able to deplete anyone's DP bar in a single turn. Their attacks are relatively tame with either a single or AoE hit. One tip I can give is that on turn 5 and onwards, the enemy might do a big AoE attack while inflicting a defense down debuff on your allies. The first time this happens is always on turn 5, so if you have the trusty defender here, you can completely nullify it on that turn. The new Yuina Memoria has a special gimmick where during an extra turn, her EX skill does more damage. Luckily, she comes with another common skill that grants another turn that only she can use. What I'm trying to do here is balancing the damage that the whole team takes so that it's more spread out, while pre-buffing Yuina since she's in the backlines. Once the stage is set and the OD gauge is almost filled, I apply a defense down and vulnerable debuff on either of the bosses, and enter overdrive. Then deliver the massive blow that is the EX skill. Now, bosses past difficulty level 100 get a fairly chunky boost in stats, so this initial hit is actually not enough to one-shot them. But given that the OD gauge is filled once again, and the bosses are fairly low at this point, all that's left to do is to cast the last of my buffs and go in for the kill. I would say the greatest challenge here is managing your SP and knowing when to use certain skills. Even if you fail a couple times, you can often see on which turns the boss will perform which attacks. Once you get a general idea, you'll be able to plan more properly. You absolutely don't need to clear the score attack at difficulty 101, as 91 is the minimum needed to get all the rewards. Aside from score attacks and anachronies, you might have noticed there's another tab lurking in the challenges menu. There is another endgame mode that allows you to permanently buff up the first SS variant of a Memoria, called Clock Tower. Here's a breakdown on how it works. The Clock Tower was added to the JP service quite a ways after it launched, but it was there on the global service on day 1. This means naturally, all the encounters over there will be tougher to handle, given that we don't yet have the tools that JP did. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible, and clearing it can prove to be a challenging but rewarding experience. The Clock Tower is split into different zones. You have a total of 50 turns to clear each zone. There are currently 28 floors as of recording this video, consisting of 6 zones so far. Each floor contains an enemy encounter that presents a unique set of obstacles to conquer. Your lowest clear time is recorded when you beat it, and that will be deducted from your total 50 turns afterwards. Although, you can always try again to see if you can clear it in less turns. You get a bit of rewards per floor, but the main attraction here is the dark matter currency upon defeating a shadow version of a character in the cast. The first one, for example, is Yuki on floor 4. Again, please be sure to be well prepped for these challenges, as these bosses are no joke. When you beat the shadow character, the dark matter can then be used to permanently upgrade the EX skill of that character's first SS Memoria. Eventually, there will be a shadow version of every character, so everyone will receive a buff in due time. Upgrading the skill will also take a different resource: diamonds. Lots of it. You might need to farm it via the HTA for a couple days, but given that this is a huge investment, you really want to think things through whether the upgrade is worth it. The Clock Tower is designed to be a truly endgame mode, so don't feel too left out, as it's permanently there for you to tackle. So that's the breakdown for all the endgame modes that's coming to the global server of HBR. I hope you've learned a couple things as to how to properly plan your teams and get the most out of progressing your account. Just remember that there are often more than one way to approach a challenge, and at times the game can feel like a puzzle to figure out, where you must bring the right pieces in order to clear it. That's it for the guide. Use the link in the description to try out the game today. As always, thank you for watching, and as always, have fun out there.